Hi, Kelly.
Bill, good morning, Bill. Nice
How
to
are
see
you?
you. I'm great. Thanks for being
We're
here.
ready to go, Kelly.
All right, great. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Bar Talk this February 22nd, 2021. Thank you all for being here. Angela and I are feeling refreshed after taking Bar Talk off last week in honor of President's Day. And I'm actually feeling very refreshed because my three kids and wife and I have been here at home for the past 10 months, and we took last week and went somewhere else for a week here in Maine, and had a week outside of our home, and it was delightful. And so I hope that any of you who have kids who are on February break may have gotten a chance to have a little vacation yourselves. So let's get going with Bar Talk for today. We've got not one, but two guests, twice the value for your money today. And so we're going to lead off with Rachel Okun. Rachel very kindly agreed, is a member of our board of governors, and very kindly agreed to take on a leadership role running our legislative review and response committee. Now, because I was the immediately prior chair of that committee, this committee has a special place in my heart. I tend to think that this is one of the very important things that the MSBA does, which is to carefully monitor what's going on in the legislature, and respond as appropriate on behalf of the association. And as those of you who tuned in a couple of weeks ago when we had Jim Cohen on, you will have heard some of those efforts that we've taken. Rachel is here today to talk about how the association goes about analyzing and responding to legislation, and also to answer any questions that you might have. To that end, if you have questions for Rachel as we go through this, or for any of us, please put those in chat, and we'll try to address as we go through it. So without further ado, Rachel, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking on the committee. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me, Kelly and Angela. I appreciate being here. So as Kelly mentioned, my name is Rachel Okun. I'm a partner at the law firm McKenna & Okun. I focus my practice primarily on personal injury law on the plaintiff side. I'm currently in my second term serving as a governor of District 3 for Cumberland County on the Board of Governors. And as Kelly mentioned, I am the new chair of the Legislative Review and Response Committee. I was on this committee for the past 2 years as well, but now I am serving as the chair. So what I want to do today is just kind of give you a little breakdown of what we do on the committee. We meet every Monday morning by Zoom, and what we do is we go over pending legislation. In fact, we just got done meeting about 15 minutes ago. So each week we get on our meeting with our legislative counsel, Jim Cohen, and prior to the meeting, he sends us a list of pending bills. Basically these bills are ones that may be of interest to the committee, which are broken down either by association bills or section bills. So thankfully he does this for us, because otherwise we would have thousands of bills to review. So basically what his office does is to break them down for us so that we can then talk about them and decide whether or not it's something that the association wants to take a stance on. So what makes a bill interesting to us? So as a committee representing the MSBA as a whole, we have to consider bills that may be of interest to the majority of our membership. So there might be many bills that might be interesting to a specific section, but we really, as the committee, try to focus on bills that are going to affect a larger portion of our membership and the people we serve. So to do this, we are always considering our key strategic goals of the association and look to see if a pending bill either serves our goals or in some way hinders them, or hinders our ability to meet those goals. So once we've identified a bill that might be of interest to us, we discuss it as a group. If we decide the bill is something that we should take a position on, we then consider whether we should do so as a committee or whether we need to bring the issue to the board as a whole. In most cases, we have pretty limited time to make a decision on the bill, as the legislature moves pretty quickly. For example, we might receive specific language on a proposed bill just days or even the day before a public hearing. So if the bill is something that we feel strongly about as a committee, we have to make that decision on how to proceed. So if we have more time and feel that we need to discuss the bill with the board, we'll do that. But again, oftentimes, we might see a title of a bill for weeks, and then the day before the public hearing, maybe there's text. So we do have to move pretty quickly on that. We do look at the bills from an objective stance rather than looking at them from our personal opinions. So we try to consider the interests of the Bar Association as a whole, and thinking about what our members how our members would see the bill, rather than saying, oh, I personally have a strong feeling about this. Again, we want to be objective, and we want to make sure that we're representing our members of the board. I'm sorry, of the Bar Association. So a lot of times we get information on specific bills by section chairs or by MSBA members who have an interest in a particular bill. But if the bill that is brought to us wouldn't affect a large portion of our membership, we try to leave it to a specific section. So if something's brought to us that maybe affects the family law section, we might then reach out to the family law chair and say, can you poll your members and see if you want to take a stance on it, rather than taking a stance as a whole as the legislative committee for the Bar Association. Once we have identified a bill, though, that we do want to take a stance on, we look at our key strategic goals, and we want to make sure that if we're taking a stance, either for or against, that we can point to the specific strategic goal in our support or opposition. In most cases, the bills that we do take a stance on have to do with access to justice and equality issues. So far this session, we have been watching several bills. We've taken a stance on 3 so far. I'll talk a little bit about what we've done with those so far, and then what we have going forward. So the first stance that we took was a letter in support of LD 32, which was an act regarding remote participation in public proceedings. So essentially, this bill would allow local governments to hold meetings remotely and allow remote participation by the community. You know, Maine's a rural state, and this bill would allow more people to participate in public proceedings, as they could do so without traveling or risking their health to participate. So we did feel that that was important enough to the Bar Association as a whole, and we did support that. We also wrote a letter in support of LD2, which is an act requiring the inclusion of racial impact statements in legislation. We did provide general support for this bill, as one of our strategic goals is to promote diversity and inclusivity. We didn't provide an opinion specifically on the language or how to come about with how to make that process work, as we feel that the legislator will continue to do so. But we just wanted to provide general support. We also wrote a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services regarding vaccine priority for certain lawyers. So while not all lawyers are currently interacting with the public, we do have several groups of lawyers who are, specifically guardian ad litem, conservators, guardians, criminal defense lawyers who are in jails and in court, and other attorneys who are required to be present at mental health facilities, things of that nature. So we did write a letter in support of getting vaccine priority for lawyers, in that it's not so much that we want the lawyers to be vaccinated, but that we want to make sure that we're protecting the people that we serve, the clients and the people in the public. This week, we actually have 2 bills that we're going to be weighing on. We just talked about these at our meeting about an hour ago. And so those 2, the first one is LD 320, which is an act to provide a right to counsel for juveniles. So I didn't know this, but apparently, as it currently stands, if a juvenile is sentenced to Long Creek, there's a mandatory 1-year minimum sentence. So this bill removes that mandatory 1-year minimum sentence, which I think is important. And then also, it would allow children under 11 not to be sent to Long Creek at all. So we are supporting that bill. We are actually writing opposition to a bill, which is LD 369. This is an act that would criminalize reporting a crime and not reporting it. So the bill as written would essentially criminalize the failure to report a potential crime. So we believe this would have broad access to justice and equality issues, and are going to not support this. We do have several other bills that we're currently watching, and we have put together a working group in regard to one of the bills, the proposed uniform law on remote notarial acts. So currently, several states have adopted rules for people to appear remotely in front of notaries. This is currently allowed by the executive order, but many of the groups involved in this proposed legislation want this to continue after the governor's order expires. And so we want to have a plan in place for that. So that's something that we are working towards, and you can stay tuned to get more information on that as that goes forward. So as the committee, we do watch these bills, but as I mentioned earlier, oftentimes we only know if the bill is of interest to our constituents if someone reaches out to us. So I ask you, if you are interested in a particular bill or piece of legislation, please reach out to us. You can contact me directly. You can contact Kelly, Jim, Angela, any of us. If you see anything that you want to take a stand on or want the association to look into. You know, we may not always take a stance, but it's important to us to be able to review the bill and consider it for you. And as members of the bar, you know, right now with the legislative session, you have the ability to make an impact law. So we do hope that you take the opportunity to do so. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Rachel, thank you so much. I do want to let everybody know that we post our written letters that we send to the legislature on our webpage, and you can find them if you mouse over member resources and go down to legislative affairs. They're all right there. So everybody can see exactly what it is that we are doing on a frequent basis. I do also want to add, and I might have missed this, Rachel, you may have already said this, so my apologies. When I wrote to DHHS talking about access for vaccines for lawyers, I tried to make it clear in that letter that I'm only talking about lawyers who are on the front lines, who are in the jails, who are in the courts frequently, who are seeing a lot of people. I've been in my home for the past 10 months. I should probably be very close to the end of the vaccination list in terms of risk factors. I just want to make sure that the lawyers who are seeing large numbers of people that is acknowledged, because they are frontline essential workers. Any questions for Rachel? Rachel, thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. This is really interesting stuff, and I'm glad that you are on this and taking the lead on it for us.
Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate it.
Hey, Kelly, this is Frank. I just wanted to point out for folks that there's a legislative update that gets issued by the MSBA, I believe on a weekly basis. And if you take a look, it's really good. I just want to let our members know that it's a really good resource full of relevant links. And if you take a look at that update and you scroll to the bottom, in the last two sections, there's a legislative database and there's a proposed and adopted state agency rules database. And if you don't use these, I highly recommend that you do. They're excellent, provide links to the text of the regulation or LD. And it's a resource that I wasn't aware of until recent years, and it's really comprehensive. So take a look at it if when the next update comes out.
Good call, Frank. Thank you for letting us all know about that.
That update will be going out today.
All right. So carrying on, we've got a couple of new PMOs, pandemic management orders, that have been issued by the court. We're going to go to the next slide to see those four new and revised PMOs. This is a lot of text right here, and of course the PMOs can be difficult to read. As best as I understand, all of this boils down to two things. First of all, PMO SJC 6, the first one, is changing the procedures for FED cases. It also creates a pilot program in certain courts doing a remote docket call. And so if you are doing FEDs, check out SJC 6. If you're not, don't. The next three PMOs I think are all coming down to one thing, which is there's a new order, number 10, SJC 10, which governs child protective custody hearings. And so that puts into place a new procedure that is not my line of work, so I don't pretend to understand it or explain it to you, but if you're involved, you should check that out. And the changes to SJC 7 and TC1 are to remove child protective custody matters from those two orders and point everybody to SJC 10 as the governing procedural document there. So FEDs and child protective custody, if you do either of those things, read the rules. Thank you, Angela. All right. And let's see what else. State of civil emergency has been extended. Indoor gathering limits has been tweaked. I'm sure people have been reading about that in the news. And we do have court administrative week coming up in about a month. Angela, over to you for MSBA.
Thanks, Kelly. Just a reminder, again, that we have judicial evaluations coming up in a week. You should have received an email today that states that you'll be receiving the survey come next Monday. And I see that our chair of our Judicial Evaluation Committee is on, Jill Kramer. Jill, did you have anything else you wanted to say about that? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
No, not at all. Take your time to fill them out, everybody. They're so important. And thanks for your time in advance.
Thanks, Jill. And then next week, we will have Magistrate Judge John Rich join us.
That's right. And Judge Rich is going to be talking to us about what's going on at the District Court of Maine, including upcoming resumption of jury trials and the steps that they're taking along those lines. Should be interesting. All right. And now we've got a couple of new categories that we've added into Bar Talk, a practice tip and a wellness tip. We actually sent out an email asking people to submit practice tips. We got a great collection. You'll be seeing those over the upcoming weeks.
Keep them coming.
What's that?
Keep them coming.
Keep them coming. That's exactly right. If you have tips that you'd like to pass along to your colleagues, please send them on in to Angela. But for today, I invited Bill to come join us, Bill Galito. And Bill and I met each other when we were on opposite sides of a fun little piece of litigation. We're now working together. Bill was kind enough to bring me in to do some bankruptcy work on a piece of litigation that he's got going on. So now instead of opposing counsel, we're co-counsel. And in the context of that, we had some fun memories of that case that we worked on before. And Bill kindly agreed to come on and tell you about one of the more unusual strategies that he or I have experienced at mediation. Bill, thanks for being here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Bill Galito. I'm a partner at Bergen Parkinson. We've got offices in Kennebunk, Saco, and York. And I represent a number of large towing companies throughout the state of Maine. It's not a practice area I ever envisioned myself in, but nonetheless, I'm there now. I ran into Kelly on a case, just to give some context. The large towing companies that I represent, like when a tractor trailer goes off the side of the road and there's Poland Spring bottles spilled everywhere, my clients typically get called out to the scene, whether it be day, night, snowstorm, rain, and have to go out there. They're called by the state police and have to pick up and essentially get the tractor trailer off the side of the road, clean things up, and get the roads cleaned up. And this happened one instance a few years ago, pre-COVID, and my client was called out to the scene of an accident. They cleaned up the scene. A tractor trailer had broken in half, and my clients created an invoice which accurately represented and reflected the difficulty of the work, the amount of time and effort put in to the job. And we weren't able to get any sort of response from the company, so we had to put the case into suit. And who popped up on the other side but Kelly McDonald? And I'm sure in Kelly's very eloquent and nice way, told me that my client's invoice was overinflated, fraudulent, too high, and unreasonable. So I think as Kelly had rightfully done, he said, let's try to go to mediation right off the bat. Nobody really disputes the facts. It's really just a question of price and number. And if we're unable to resolve the case, we'll know where we're going for the rest of the pendency of the case. And I said, I think that's a great idea. Let's go to mediation. So I had recommended Tom Danlick, and having done some quick math this morning, I wanted to give Tom the benefit of the doubt. Based on his profile anyway, Tom's been practicing law for 47 years as an attorney. So he's seen just about everything. And we got into mediation, and this again pre-COVID, so we all had met in the same room originally and broke out into separate rooms. And we got right down to the end of the day, and both of our clients had drawn a line in the sand. I don't remember the specific numbers, but Kelly's client was offering $30,000, my client wanted $35,000, so we had a $5,000 difference. And we got to the point where each had said, this is my bottom line. That's all I'm ever going to give. They can either take it or we're going to walk out. And I had told my clients that as much as we were in the room, I said, if we say this is our last and final offer, we need to get ready to stand up, put your coat on. And if they come back and it's a no, we're going to walk out of the room. Tom Danlick sauntered back in, probably at about 4:15, and he just was shaking his head and he said, no, I can't get you, the 35,000. They're stuck at 30. So I, by that point, had already had my coat on. I was walking out the conference room door and my clients were behind me. Tom was kind of standing in the doorway. And as we're walking out, I kind of look back to see if my client's coming with, and I see him look at Tom and he says, would they flip a coin for it? And Tom kind of shot a look over to me like, is he serious? And I said, well, if he said it, I think he's serious. And Tom was just kind of standing there shaking his head. And my client's like, yeah, no, go ask him if he would flip a coin to resolve the case. If they win, I get 30,000. If I win, I get 35,000. And Tom just looked very befuddled and just kind of shocked and amazement that somebody would offer that. But Tom walked down the hallway, and we could see the other room where we knew that the other side was. And Tom went in, and not but 10 seconds after being in the room, he popped his head out and kind of gave us this hand gesture to come on down. So at that point, we knew that this was going to come down to a coin flip. So we walked in the room, and between myself, Tom Danlick, and Kelly, we were all trying to be very judicious about, how the coin flip was going to go, overanalyze it, make sure that everyone understood. And finally, after about 2 minutes of doing that, both of our clients just said, let's just flip the coin. We know, everybody knows what the outcome is. Let's just call it in the air. So Tom, I think he told me it was the first time in his career, he had to go find a coin in the office somewhere, and he ended up finding a quarter. Came back in, made sure he showed everybody that he had one side was heads, one side was tails, and he flipped the coin. And my client called it midair. And as the coin was, midair, I was just lamenting to myself that, the outcome of this was going to determine a $5,000 swing in the case. The coin dropped. I can't remember if it was heads or if it was tails, but all I remember is my client lost. But I can't tell you how this experience changed the tone in both rooms. Our clients went from complete adversaries to actually laughing about how the case ended. And while we were standing in the room, Kelly's clients basically ended up saying, these are good guys. We're going to put them back on our list of tow companies to call. So basically, my clients won back their business. And I was still kind of in amazement and shock leaving the mediation. I said to my client, I've never seen that. I can't believe you guys would propose that. And my client looked at me and just said, listen, it made too much sense not to do it. He's like, I don't have to pay your fees anymore. The case is over with. I get my money now. It just made a ton of sense to me. Which I just found interesting and amazing. And having spoken to Tom a number of times since that, he still kind of shakes his head in amazement. That was the first and only time, at least to this point, that he had seen a case, resolve with a coin flip at the end. But I think there's two important takeaways, to this. One, never stop searching for a potential resolution to your client's case. There are really no limits to creating a potential resolution. And it was interesting, Kelly and I were talking with Judge Fagoni, bankruptcy court judge, recently, and he had an interesting take on it, that it was a really good way for two very hard-nosed clients to have drawn a line in the sand and not really give in to the other one's demand, but yet resolve the case on favorable terms. And the other takeaway being, don't let your own expectations, rules, or ego, kind of get in the way of a resolution. Had I, gone through with my own advice to my clients, he wouldn't have resolved the case that day, or they wouldn't have resolved the case that day. So again, don't let your own expectations, rules, and ego get in the way of a good settlement and a good story. So I'm happy to share that story with you guys. And should you ever run into Tom Danlick at some point in mediation, you can feel free to ask him about the coin flip. I'm sure he will remember.
Bill, you did a great job of telling that story, and I'm still tickled by it all these years later. So thank you so much for taking a couple of minutes today, coming on and sharing that unusual negotiation strategy. I've tried to use it. I tried to use it one other time, and the other side was like, that's ridiculous. Can't do that. So it's got to be in a very special circumstances. So thank you, Bill, for sharing that negotiation strategy. Bill Nugent, our second bill of the day, not counting the legislative bills, offers up our wellness tip, which is try to take 10,000 steps a day. I already am fairly sure I'm going to fail on that one today, but I'm doing a really good job of holding down this chair, and I probably will be for a while. We've got a gratitude. It's sugaring season. And this may be familiar to some of you, but as we enter the end of February and March, and we start having weeks where the temperature fluctuates to above freezing during the day and below freezing at night, it operates almost as a pump, waking up trees' circulation systems as they start drawing water out of the ground and sending it up through their bark as sap. And when you tap maple trees, you get out sap. I'm going to go tap a half a dozen trees in my neighborhood later on this afternoon, I'm hoping, and this weekend have my first boil to get some of the best tasting maple syrup you've ever had. And I live in Portland. You know, the sugaring is something that you can do whether you are up in the county, where it's going to be a few more weeks before you're going to be sugaring, I reckon, or in a much more urban area. It's great fun. If anybody would like to know more about it, I'm happy to share with you. So that's what I've got. Angela, anything else from you? All right. Well, thank you, Angela, for organizing this. Rachel, thank you for being here. Bill, thank you for being here. And thank you to all of you. I hope you have a great week. We will see you next week at our next Bar Talk. Have a good day.